All right, so this Jorge Masvidal deep dive, huh?
Yeah.
I gotta say, his JRE MMA show appearance had some real surprises.
Yeah, definitely.
You know, Masvidal, he's a brawler, right? Straight up street fighter in the octagon.
Oh, for sure. One of the best.
But here's the thing. The dude's been in some wars, absolute wars, and yet he's surprisingly healthy.
And that's the interesting part, isn't it? Like, how's he managed that?
Exactly. That's what we're digging into, right? Because it's more than just physical conditioning.
It's gotta be, right? You can't just out-tough the kind of damage MMA dishes out.
See, and that's where Masvidal gets philosophical, which I didn't expect.
Oh, yeah? How so?
He's all about constantly evolving, always learning. He even talked about healing from injuries, the kind that would sideline most fighters for good, and he bounces back. His secret. He says it's about the mindset. As long as you know that every day you could learn something new, you'll always be going forward.
I mean, that's powerful stuff, right? And it applies to anything, not just fighting.
Right. And that's what's so cool about this.
It's like he's cracked the code on longevity, and it's not just about physical therapy or whatever.
It's deeper than that, right?
Way deeper. He's talking about constantly refining his approach to everything. Training, recovery, the whole 9 yards.
He called himself a student of the game. And I was like, damn, that's actually spot on.
And the thing is, he admitted this wasn't always his approach.
Oh, yeah. You mean like back in the Miami backyard brawling days?
Mm-hmm. Even beyond that. Think about those brutal weight cuts he used to put himself through.
Oh, man, don't even remind me. Hearing him describe that was rough.
It's crazy, right?
Think about it. Masvidal walks around at a lean, 172 pounds, right?
Okay.
But to fight in his weight class, he had dropped down to 156. Insane.
That's nuts. It's like trying to drain a swimming pool just to step on a scale.
And it took a toll, man. He admitted it.
Well, yeah, dehydration, it's not just about being thirsty. It impacts everything.
He said it messes with your chin, your legs, basically your body's ability to take a hit.
Which in MMA, that's kind of your job, right? To take a hit and keep coming.
He said your chin and legs take a massive hit when you cut that much weight. Can't argue with that logic.
And he's right. Dehydration affects your brain function, too. Yeah. Your reaction time, your decision-making, all that gets messed with.
Scary when you think about it. And it makes you wonder, what are we pushing through in our own lives that have those hidden costs? Maybe it's not weight cutting, but there's always something. It's a good reality check.
Totally. But the good news is, Masvidal figured it out, right? He recognized the damage those drastic cuts were doing.
Yeah, he's all about prioritizing sleep now, listening to his body. It's almost like he had to learn the hard way.
Which, unfortunately, a lot of fighters do. They push and push until something breaks for good.
But Masvidal, he's adapted. He even said something like, true strength comes from working with your body, not against it.
And that's a crucial difference, right? That's where the growth mindset comes in.
Totally. He's become a student of himself, in a way, figuring out how to optimize, how to keep going.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty impressive when you think about it.
It really is. And it makes you wonder, what will he focus on next?
And, you know, it's like some people, they're just naturals, right? Like they can coast on talent alone.
Oh, totally. Some guys just have that it factor.
And that was Masvidal early on. Remember those stories? Staying up all night, partying, then just strolling into the gym and dismantling people.
Oh, yeah. I'd heard about those days. Like, it was nothing to him.
And you almost wonder, like, was that sustainable long term? Just relying on pure talent.
Well, that's the thing. He figured that out, didn't he? Like, there's a ceiling to how far raw talent can take you.
And he hit it right. He talks about how around 30 something clicked.
Yeah, he realized, okay, I can win on instinct, but what if I actually put in the work, the real work?
Totally. It went from talent and grit to this, like, disciplined, almost scientific approach.
And you can hear it in how he talks about training now. It's not just about being tough, it's about being smart.
Exactly. And I think that's why he respects guys like John Jones and Georges St. Pierre so much.
Those guys are machines.
Yeah.
Like, their dedication is legendary.
He even said they're wired differently.
Which, coming from Masvidal, that's saying something.
Right. It's like he sees them as the next level. Like, that's where I want to be.
And it makes you wonder, could Masvidal have reached that level earlier if he'd had that mindset from the start?
Who knows? We can't go back in time. But it's interesting to see him acknowledge that now.
It shows growth, right? Like, he's not afraid to admit he could have done things differently.
And that self-awareness, it's not just about fighting either.
Oh, absolutely. We haven't even gotten into his thoughts on, well, everything else.
Right. Like politics, society.
Yeah.
He's got some strong opinions.
And that's where things get really interesting, because you can't separate those views from his experiences.
And this is where Masvidal outside the octagon gets interesting, right? Like, we've talked about his evolution as a fighter, the growth mindset. But his political views, man, that's some heavy stuff.
Yeah, you can tell it's not just talk with him. Like, he's got strong opinions, especially about socialism.
It's like coming from where he does, his family's history is personal for him.
Definitely. He talked about his dad escaping Cuba, right? Risking everything for freedom.
And you can hear that in his voice, you know? Yeah. It's not theoretical. It's like, this is my family we're talking about.
Absolutely. It shapes your whole worldview, right? Seeing what they went through.
You know, he told this story, and it kind of stuck with me. He was talking to this bank CEO, like one of the guys who were supposed to have it all figured out, right?
Right.
And this CEO, he pulls Masvidal aside, off the record, and says, get ready, man. Things are about to get really bad. Like, warned him.
Wow, that's wild. And knowing Masvidal, he probably took that to heart.
Oh, he did. And it's funny because this was right before that whole FTX Arena sponsorship thing blew up.
Oh, you're kidding. The arena where he was supposed to have his next fight?
The one and only. Like, talk about irony.
Oh, yeah.
It's like his distrust of the system of authority, it was justified.
And you see that in how he approaches everything, not just fighting, but like you said, politics, finances, he's questioning everything.
And maybe that's a good thing, right? I mean, not to get too deep, but in a world with so much information, so much spin, maybe a little skepticism is healthy.
Totally. And it's interesting how that ties back to his views on fighting itself, you know?
Oh, totally. Like that whole thing with his own promotion company, right? He's not just content to play the game. He wants to change it.
And I think that's what's so compelling about Masvidal, you know? He's not just a fighter, he's a thinker. He's got this whole philosophy about life, about pushing boundaries.
And whether you agree with him or not, you got to respect his passion. Right. Like when he went on that rant about knee strikes on grounded opponents, I was like, damn, this guy cares.
He's got principles, right? Like even if you don't agree with his stance on the rules, you can see where he's coming from.
Totally. It's like he's saying, let's make this a true test of skill, no holds barred.
And you can't deny that raw, almost primal approach. It's what makes him so exciting to watch.
Right. It's like he's always pushing the limits. And not just with the rules, but with himself, too. Like that whole thing about Muay Thai, how he wants to bring it more into the mainstream.
He sees the artistry in it, right? The beauty and the brutality.
Totally. And you know what? I think that's a pretty good note to end on. Jorge Masvidal, he's a fighter, a philosopher, an innovator, and he's not done evolving yet. What a deep dive this has been. We started talking about longevity in a brutal sport, and we ended up talking about everything from politics to the future of combat. It just goes to show you, you never know where a conversation's going to go. But that's the beauty of it, right? So until next time, keep your minds open, keep questioning, keep exploring, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.